Welcome again to Leadership and Learning. This is going to be one of my favorite episodes. I can guarantee you right now, because I am here with one of my very, very dear friends, Sathya Mabbu, who I had the pleasure of working with several years back at a semiconductor company that we worked at together. She's been a fabulous auntie to my kids. So we are very, very close. And she so graciously is here to introduce herself because she's part of the technical world as well. And she's gone through the leadership track. So exactly what this program is all about. So Sathya, if you can just start off and tell everyone about your role right now and your different titles through the years at the same company here.
Thank you, Tram. Thank you for that awesome introduction, and thank you for having me here. So my name is Sathya, and I started off as a software developer at Nanometrics, and I progressed to being a senior developer after many years. And then I became a software manager who had a team in Singapore. So I have lived there for a year. I trained my team and set them up. And at the end of it, I came back to the US and I became a program manager, managing software programs for the same product, right, in the same team. And currently, I am a program manager for the hardware side. It's a completely different field than what I trained for, in college. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
So the first question for you is, what makes you stay at the company that you're at?
Well, it started off with, I was on a H-1B visa, right? I'm from India. So I came here as a student. I got a job, converted to a H-1, started working. So that sort of limits your options for what you can do, right? I wanted a green card. So, I was investing in like the company, the role, the position. So they would apply for a green card for me, right? So it's circumstantial in one sense. But after that, I started thinking of, okay, what do I want to do? Right? Given that I couldn't change this situation, I started looking at what can I do? What can I, do within the company? What roles can I take? What experience can I start talking to people, looking at myself, talking to myself as well? What are my goals? What are the skill sets that I do want to have? So I would say it's a mixture of, exploring, dealing with the situation as it is, and then seeing what do I want to achieve and how can I get that done?
And then you and I have talked about this before, because part of my dissertation is about the promotional tracks in the promotional systems in different organizations. So especially in tech organizations, which you and I have been in, generally 2 tracks. If a company is good, they have at least 2 tracks. So you've got your technical track as well as your just leadership track going up to the C-suite and executive suite. And then oftentimes, more often than not, you get companies that the engineers and the scientists only believe that there's one track. You just go up the executive chain, and that's the only way you get promoted. Now, how did you make the decisions through the years that you've worked there at the company to go the different tracks that you did?
Well, we had 2 tracks, right? We have the technical track and the management track. So, and at that point, I know I wanted to get to a certain level of expertise technically. So I went up the technical track, but then I was also thinking, oh, I have other skills. I like working with people. I wanted to develop people. I wanted to have a team, execute on larger projects. And so that meant, being a manager. So then I switched into being a manager. So switched to the management track. But then when I looked at the tracks, I was like, oh, the technical track also goes way up. It's not just, it doesn't stop at just like a director.
Yeah, not many people realize that. So how did you come to that point?
And said, hey, can you show me your tracks? Like, what do you have? And
they something as simple as just asking, because I know a lot of engineers in different companies who they don't even ask. It's just an assumption.
So here's the thing. So they said, go back to your manager. And I said, well, I have, and I'm not getting the information I want. So you need to provide me that information, or tell him to provide me, like, being persistent about like, I need to know this.
And that's one of the best and greatest qualities that always attracted me to you, Sathya, is your persistence. You're like, no, if I'm not getting the information I want, I'm going to get it. Somehow I'm going to get it.
I'm going to get it. And then when I had a team, I also wanted my team members to know their options. And that, some people had the misconception that the only way they could grow was to become a manager. And I'm like, no, you have the option in the technical track to go deep into your expertise areas and then grow from there, right? You have a parallel track going all the way up. You don't have to switch to a management track. They think it's more prestigious, or like I've heard comments like that, right? I'm like, no, 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 no. I actually printed out this giant printout, like showing them, like, here's the tracks, here's all the levels, here's where you need to be promoted to that level. So these are your action points, right? If this is your target. So I was able to do that for them, but also as a precursor, do it for myself as well, to see it and ask for it and like plan for it. And also, being more prepared for reviews, or having the conversation persistently every year, like, hey, this is what I was planning for. Where do you think I am? Or what do you think I need to work on? Right? You're also guiding the conversation as much as they are giving you a review.
Yeah, so the regular reviews too, whereas there's some companies that just wait for that annual review, and then you get really nervous, stressed out people.
I think more frequent conversations help a lot, and also having a running list of your own work, like having it in a document where you're documenting different things you're doing, where at the end of the year, you can pull that up and say, hey, look at all the things I've done towards these different areas that you've asked me to work on. That skill I learned. I didn't have that in the beginning.
Right.
I learned very quickly after a few years of bad reviews that, hey, I need to do this for myself.
Yeah, I was just in an interview actually with a person in the military. He was learning, like he learned the hard way. Like, wait a minute, you don't know all the things that I did. But how did you get into that practice? Because quite honestly, I've seen it happen where it's just hard to document everything, like do a daily or do a weekly, especially they just kind of let it get on the they forget about it.
I wouldn't do it daily or weekly. I do it more like maybe monthly. And also like when something happens, like, let's say, I just got invited to participate in SEMI, Texas chapter. So I would go make a note of that just to make sure that I'm not forgetting that, right? And what that means for my time or like for what I'm doing. So, when milestones happen or major changes happen, you go make a note of that, or you finish a project, or you're taking on a new project, just make sure to note that for yourself so you don't forget it at the end of the year. That
do you have any tips of like what to note other than event happened or activity happened? Do you have any tips?
Happens? What does this mean? What value are you adding by doing that, right? Is it exposure for the company? Are you making something more efficient? Or, is it just you're adding value to the portfolio? Like, what does it translate to for the company? For yourself is for yourself, that's fine. But if you're presenting it to your boss, you want to say, hey, this is the value that this project added, and this is what I did. This is how I contributed to it.
And that's a good practice in general, not for presentation.
And it doesn't come naturally. So it's at least for me, I need more thought put into it. So I don't want to do it at the end of the year. I want to do it when I have time and have it ready by the end of the year.
You do a deliberate action plan where you put some time into it.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the technical track and the manager track. You've gone different ways though. You and I have talked in the years that you didn't stay on the manager track.
No, so apparently this I did not know. They did it to me, and then I found out is now the company has a technical, a management, and an individual contributor track. So I went from technical to management to individual. And funnily, I was in a training yesterday that said the path upwards is not linear. Sometimes you take sideway tracks, then you switch over, you see what you get out of it, right? It's not always straight up.
That's like life in general.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, can you just give just a little definition of the 3 different tracks?
Oh, so technical is, for me, it was engineering, software development, building expertise in my field, practices, programming, coding, tools, stuff like that, right? So you're focusing on that and you keep going up, like you do projects to you're driving projects to you're bringing up ideas. So it's, and you're maybe doing research. So it goes up that way. And then this management track, which is, you want to manage people, have a team, execute on, right? So that's management. And then as you keep going, your team gets bigger, you have maybe multiple products underneath you, you're making an impact across the board. And then there's the individual contributors, people like me, like in my current role, program managers who don't have a team, who are not technical either, right? but you're still driving a huge project or program. So they fall under the individual contributor track.
And
So,
so are there different caps at the three different
there
tracks?
are different caps. So technical management go all the way up to, I think, up to the VP level, they track equally, right? With individual contributors, I think they cap off at like 6 levels. So I think when you hit that expertise point where you're like completely independent, you have all the skills you need, all the tools you need, and you're able to use them. I think at that point, you have to decide where you want to go. Do you want to go to management, or do you want to, go back to your technical thing, or are you happy where you are? That's okay too,
So in your situation, what are your influences to go in either? Because it sounds like your company has that flexibility to let you decide, and then you work your way toward that particular goal that you have.
Well, I think it's my end goal and working backwards. So I've always had this notion of like, I want to be in the C-suite at some point in my life, at some company. And so backtracking from there, I'm like, okay, there's my technical expertise and there's the managing people part, right? And then there is understanding different aspects of the business, which is what this current role gives me. And then having conversations with people and saying, hey, if this is where I want to go, what is missing? What do I need? Right? And so taking notes on that and saying, okay, so then maybe the next step needs to be doing a different role to gain that expertise and like checking the box, right? So it's what's your end goal and then working backwards from that. That's the way I do it.
You and I had also talked about your childhood influences, like where you grew up to the people you grew up over, the classes school, right? And all of those influences, they also play a role, which lots of people disregard. They just look at their resume, and try to get a job and make decisions based on their resume. But you also talk about your childhood and how growing up in India has influenced your just love of the technical world and the technical field.
I think I was lucky to go to a good school, right? My parents, I was fortunate enough, I have to say, coming from India to go to a private school and learning programming in elementary school, like 4th grade. Like, that's pretty unheard of. When I talk to people, they're like, you did what in which grade? So, I think that was my starting point for being really fascinated with computers and technology. It really interested me. And so I sort of got super hyper focused on like, I wanted to be an engineer. And also having, my brother was also an engineer. He's much older than me. So he got an engineering school, and watching him go through that, I was like, oh, that's what I want to do, but I want to do computer science. I was very set on that. And then just every, high school, I picked computer science, and then I got into engineering, CS again, wanting to do my master's, come to the US. So it was just like another step towards doing that vision that I had for myself.
And you've had it ever since at least 4th grade.
Yeah. And my mom thought I was crazy. She was like, what do you mean you want to be a computer engineer? How do you know, at this age? But I was just set on it. I just didn't change that. It was very, I kept doing programming over the years, and I still wanted to do that and learn more. So I just stayed on the track. Yeah. And then, coming to the US, doing my master's, finding work in the semi industry, which I did not plan for. That was a complete coincidence. I
honestly don't think anyone ever planned for semi. Sorry, all of my semi friends, most of my friends come from semi, but I'm going to make that blanket statement and assume no one ever dreams about being in semi.
Yeah, it was just like a coincidence that I got here, but then I was like, oh, this is another fascinating industry that I had never given thought to.
Like once you get into it, hands down, best jobs I've ever had.
Yeah.
Best people I've ever met were in semi.
Like it's challenging. It's, it really blows my mind, the scale at which we do things. Like, it pales in comparison to, in my opinion, to every other industry that I know of.
You mean every other industry pales to it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, the scale, the research, the art.
Cross-functional. I've always seen that in every company that I've been in. like all the different parts that come into place, all the different
and the complexity of the technology and what they make. And I studied chip architecture as part of my computer engineering, but I'm like, this is even better than that. Like, it goes even farther. So I was lucky to get in the field, but I realized like, if I wanted long-term satisfaction, I needed a challenging environment to learn continuously. And this was it, right?
Now let's talk about the hard stuff. So the challenges, let's go with the challenges of the technical track and then the management track.
Challenges. Switching from technical is, I think it was easier for me because I was in a certain field and I got into the same area of like software development. So that was easy. But learning the industry was the hard part. Like suddenly coming into semi and you're like, what are you doing again? Like, what does this all mean?
Definitely not something you get in university.
No. You get the architecture part, but then like manufacturing and like the challenges we faced and coming into such a small team, there was no training. It was just so much learning, and there's still learning. I still keep learning about things that I have no idea about, right? Yeah. So that's, but the technical part was, learning the industry was a challenge for me. I thought I had the core expertise, but I didn't know the industry. So that was huge learning, right? And then coming to a point of like, I would like to manage people, work with people, manage a team, manage projects. How do I get there? So, I was offered this opportunity to train someone in Singapore that they had hired, a new software engineer. And they said, hey, would you be interested in training? And I thought of like, oh yeah, maybe I could train and see what it feels like. And that person will work on projects with me. And, maybe I'll get a feel for it. They don't report to me, but it's a good taste of what's coming if that's what I want to do. So I did that. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for this. And then I got the team, and then that had its own set of challenges. Like,
well, that's where you and I like really started working together, because that's when I was doing the management training. And
so you did the disc training when I became a new manager, right? I came through the manager training, and when you did this training, I was like, it was a wake-up call for me. When you said like natural versus adaptive styles, and it's when people are on the opposite ends, they need to think what they're doing. Are they doing the right thing, right?
And you're talking about the disc training. Yeah, one of my favorites, hands down. Like every time I've done that training in any company, I always get those ahas. And
it was that aha moment.
That moment, yeah.
Right. And then looking at my skills and saying, oh, I actually enjoy working with people, but maybe I don't enjoy certain aspects of management, which is, I like developing people. I like working with them, collaborative environment, influencing decisions, but I don't like the grind of like, the review process or like, managing expectations of employees. It dragged me down is what I realized, because it weighed heavily on me on how employees felt. And that sometimes I didn't have any influence on it, on budgets or like, what I could give them, right? So that was like, oh, like maybe I don't enjoy this portion of it, but I enjoy these other things about being a manager. And then the disc fell on top of it, where I was like, oh, I'm an I. Maybe I need to be more general than like dig deep down, so it was, it level set a little bit. And so when I came back from Singapore and having a team and having managed it for a couple of years, I was like, I was ready for a change. And, I was looking around, and my boss at the time said, hey, would you want to try being a program manager? And I went and looked at it, and I was like, oh, I won't have a team. Great. But I get to work with all these departments, all these people. I can still drive projects. I can still collaboratively work, but I don't have to worry about all these other things that, I don't like.
Yeah. So you were able to have that introspection of looking at the things that you do well, your strengths, and really honing in on that, and then fitting the different roles and responsibilities of this other role to it.
Right. And then, after DISC that I did with you, I also worked with a job counselor to do other tests, right? And to sort of evaluate, where am I? Am I in the right place? Am I heading towards the right track? Yeah, C-suite, seems nice, right? Like that's what I have in mind. But do I really want to do that? Do I have the right skill sets? I don't want to go against the grain, like against what I'm naturally good at either. So it was a year and change of like really, looking at everything.
I'm glad you see it that way. Not everyone sees it that way. That taking that change, and you have to be very self-aware and for lack of a better term, be very mature in your thinking and mindset in order to be able to take any kind of feedback. And these are the assessments that you're talking about, and actually flipping it and doing something about it.
Right. And also, like I used to have the mindset that you have to keep growing, right, in your roles. I was like, do I really want to do that? Like, do I really want to make that much money? Like, or do I even want that amount of responsibility and like driving a company type of thing? So it's just conversations with yourself, like really understanding, do you really want that or not?
And do you ever find yourself asking yourself, why? Like, what for? If I got all of that, what for at the end of the day?
Yeah, I do. What I do ask that question to myself, like, why do I want to do that? What am I getting from doing that? Is it leadership or is it satisfaction? Is it I've achieved a goal? Like, what itch am I scratching? Wanting to go towards that goal. So yes, I do think about that.
And so where are you at now? Like, it's what, year 16 or something for you at that company?
It is year 15 on February 11th.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
So where are you at? How are you feeling with all the decisions that you've made? I mean, the one major one, of course, is you've stayed at the same company, but you've gone on different paths. And the beauty of the company is they've allowed you to. They have those tracks available, those options available.
Right. So at this point, I'm doing program management for hardware, which is, again, a new learning experience. I think it adds to my skill set. I'm happy in that sweet spot of learning, driving, working with people, and one thing I do, and I also think of like, I do want to do business development at some point. So that's in my mind, but maybe a few years down the line. So at this stage, I'm happy. I feel like couple of years of like doing this will keep me in a good spot.
Sathya, it's been fabulous to have you on here. Thank you so much for taking the time. And of course, thank you for the gifts that you sent to the kids for New Year's. They loved it. Of course, thank you for all the years of friendship and all that you've taught me as a leader and growing in your track.
It's mutual. It's a two-way street. I think we've both learned from each other, right? And we will continue to do so. So thank you for interviewing me. It was actually nice to sort of summarize everything for myself as well.
Your introspection is just fabulous. My goodness. Any last minute tips before we go to those who are kind of in this brink of, I don't know about which track I should go on. Should I go technical? What should I ask myself?
What brings you satisfaction? I think at the end of the day, if you're happy at the end of the day, doing what you're doing, I think that's what matters. You have to ask yourself, is it working with people? Is it technology? Is it money? Is it something else that brings you satisfaction, right? But this is a quote my dad used to tell me: when you die, you don't take your money with you.
Totally true.
So it's like, so that I think, so you will have your experiences, and so you have to think for that about what brings you satisfaction. So that's the number one thing that I would tell people.
And that's probably what you ask yourself quite often, if not every day, huh?
Yeah. Am I happy doing? There's ups and downs, right? But that's more micro. But on the macro level, am I satisfied?
Yeah. So thanks again so much, Seth. We will see each other soon. Thanks again. It was great to have you on.
Thank you, Tram.
All right. We'll see you next time.